Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Home Study. This is a podcast for parents, especially those who have children through or are exploring foster care or adoption. We are here to help you navigate the world beyond paperwork and placement. Thanks for being here. All right, welcome back, everyone. For today's episode, we have an awesome guest with us. Her name is Tara. Tara is an adoptive mom. She's a teacher. She's in North Carolina. And Tara, we're just so happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So Abby met Tara on a mission trip. Is that right?
Yes, we went to Uganda together.
Okay, which is like so unique because it usually like our past people that we've been interviewing are either someone we don't know and we just like met them online, or it's someone that like we know really well and we met them like in a very normal setting, which this is not one. So I'm kind of curious to hear the story here. I didn't even know you went to Uganda.
Yeah, okay, this is like an example of the power of social media. I know a lot of people talk about how they strongly dislike social media or they get off altogether, but like I keep up with like all the people that I've met in my lifetime through just looking on Facebook. And like Tara, we haven't even like talked like this in whatever we just said 15 years or so, but like we have kind of known where each other are at in our lives,
Yeah,
and that's the power of social media.
that's very cool.
That's crazy. So Tara, have you been on other mission trips? Is this like a regular thing for you, or?
Yes, I went on a lot as a teenager and young adult. That's how I met my husband. I met my husband in Botswana. We did an internship the year after high school. So I
Okay.
got a cool friend and a husband out of it.
And then when did you guys go?
So we went in 2009.
18.
I mean,
2009.
yeah, 2009.
Wait, in college? Were you
Yeah.
already married? But
I
you'd
met my
already
husband
met your
on a trip
husband.
after. Yeah.
No, okay,
Well,
okay.
so yeah, I met him and we like got together 4 years later.
Oh, okay,
Wow.
okay.
Yeah, we were just like friends. Like he lived in Texas, and then he just called me up 4 years later and was like, "I think we should date."
No, wait. Were you not like had you been talking? Like
Not,
what?
I mean, yeah, like we kept in touch as friends, some here and
Like through
there.
texting or through what? Like
Yeah, and calls, and some of the interns had gotten together and visited stateside, but that was never on my radar. And then when he called and said we should date, I was like, "Thanks, like no," but it happened.
Yeah, that is so cool. Okay, so you met your husband, got together a few years later, and then got married,
yeah,
had
how long did you
children.
guys date
Yeah.
before you got married?
So he um moved to North Carolina. We had been dating about a year and we got engaged when he moved here and then got married 6 months later. And adoption was always on our radar. We had talked about it. I don't really know why or remember like a specific moment, but I just always had that on my radar. Kind of, I just always thought it might be something I was interested in. I was not super excited about the thought of biologically having children. That just always kind of freaked me out. So I didn't have like a reason to think that I couldn't have children biologically, but I just never really was that interested. And then we got married. We had talked about adoption. He felt the same way. We always thought that was our plan. And then our son Jack was a surprise. So we had been married, I don't know, 8 months or so, and got pregnant with Jack and had our first son biologically. And that was never our plan. But then we were like, okay, I guess this is happening.
Here we are.
Here we
eight
are.
months. We've been married 8 months. You're like very newlywed still.
Oh
That's
yeah, I
like
was in my first year teaching. I mean, it was not the ideal time probably, but it was, he was perfect. So now we can't imagine doing it any other way. We had Jack. Then pretty much right away, before Jack was even a year old, we started the process for a domestic infant adoption. I think we always sort of thought it would be international. I didn't really have like a specific plan, but I think that's just always how I had pictured it, just because I had like traveled so much and done that type of work in other countries. Um, but When we started the process, we just decided to hold our hands really open, and we went to some meetings, some trainings, and we just started to ask God to direct our steps. And our heart just kind of got stuck on having an open adoption, which is not it's not impossible internationally, but it's not very common. And we started to just get this vision for maybe wanting to have a birth mother who could be close to us and that we could be open with. And so that led us to domestic infant. And it took us about 3 years. So Jack was less than a year old when we started, and he was 4 when we brought our son.
Okay. That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
I actually am also surprised that it wasn't international. That's what I was thinking. Like, I've never met your child. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is an international adoption. But
He's from right here in North Carolina, 2 hours away, and that's
Wow.
just what God has for us.
Yeah. So when you started the process, did you find an agency to work with? Did you consider foster care? What was that kind of original plan like?
So we like I said, we felt really open. We knew some people. Like, we didn't know a lot of people who had adopted. That's just not something that either of us had been exposed to a lot. But we go to big church, and we found a family that had adopted, and we just invited them over for dinner and said, like, "Hey, could you just give us a starting point?"
Hey, friends, if you've been enjoying Beyond the Home Study and want to help us keep these real, honest conversations going, we've got 2 simple ways you can support the show. First, you can subscribe to or follow the show and give us a 5-star review wherever you listen. Second, we just set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. It's a way to donate to our show and just a small way to say, hey, this matters. So if you would like to support the show, you can head to buymeacoffee.com/Beyond the Home Study, or simply click the link in our show notes. And please know that we're incredibly grateful.
So they directed us to their agency, which works out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and we went to their interest meeting, liked everything that we heard, and just sort of went from there. So I feel like so many people, you hear the story of like, I just didn't know where to start. And it's like, oh, I knew this one person one time that told me about this agency. So we just kind of went with them.
Yeah,
I mean, it
I
makes
mean, I
sense.
I feel like I hear that from a lot of people of like there's so many different agencies out there now and like some do international and domestic and you're like trying to figure out who is doing this the way that I believe is ethical and right and all of that. So to have a personal recommendation, it seems like that's the way a lot of people go.
Yes, for sure. Because like you said, it's of the utmost importance that you believe in what they're doing, that your values match up. We really wanted an agency that does both family reunification and adoption because we didn't want it to be the kind of situation where it's an agency just taking babies from their families where they could have been reunited. And so our agency did both, which made us feel a lot better about it. And we did consider both. We just kind of we went to so many trainings, meetings, panels, and just sort of landed on we're not like ultra spiritual people that do this a lot, but we actually fasted while we were making the decision. So like once a week we fasted, and we would just like pray and set aside specific time to just like beg the Lord to give us guidance because we just felt really confused, overwhelmed by the decision. And it just became so incredibly clear that a domestic open adoption was where our hearts, wanted to go. And so that's what we decided.
And then when you brought him home, your older son was 4. How old was your son that you brought home?
So Bo, who we adopted, it was 6 months. And it was an interesting situation because 6 months is not typical for a domestic infant adoption. So typically, our agency places you or matches you with a pregnant woman, and then you walk through her pregnancy with her and then take the baby home pretty much at birth. Um, that's like the typical formula for our agency. But as you guys know, with adoption, there is no typical. So we got a call right before Christmas, and they were like, we have this really unique situation. We've had someone come to us with a 6-month-old baby. We've never done this. There's not like a protocol for this. We're going to have to call in the state director to figure out like what steps we should take. But would you even consider a 6 months old? And so we were like, yes, of course we will. But a funny story, you know how you have to go through the list and you have to say all the things that you would consider, like, would you accept a blind child? Would you accept a child if XYZ? So the only thing we said no to was that we would not, we wanted to name the baby. That was like my thing. I've dreamt about baby names since I was a teenager. I just had it stubbornly in my mind, like, no, I think that I should get to choose the baby's name. And so that was our like hard line. And they said, okay, well, she wants to meet with you. She's already picked your book. But she has one stipulation, and it was that we keep the name.
So it was.
Yeah.
Dude, like, you're just determined to like press any little bit of stubbornness out of me in this.
That's a cute
So we
name,
were
though.
like,
Bo's a cute name.
it's so cute. It's so cute. And we got really lucky because I was fully expecting it to be like Jehoshaphat or like something horrible. Because she had chosen the name and she felt really strongly about it. It had deep meaning to her. And so, but we had to agree to keep it before we knew what it was.
Wow.
So we
Oh,
were like,
no.
she was like, that's the stipulation. If you want to meet with her, you have to agree to keep the name. And we are like, okay, what's the name? And they was like, oh, well, we can't tell you because of HIPAA. Like, we can't tell you the name yet. And so we had to agree before we knew.
Been like a hard no for me. I think I'd been like, sorry, Pat.
My mind was really, truly like jumped straight to worst case scenario. I knew it
Yeah.
was either going to be something really weird or like an ex boyfriend's name or like, what
Or
if it
like,
was Jack? And
what
we
if it was
already had
Jack? That's what I was gonna say. Jack and Jack.
Oh my gosh. You'd have to
but
start
we
calling Jack, who's already 4, by like his middle name.
Yeah.
so we agreed and we got very lucky because Bo is adorable. So we all love the
That is great. I've never heard of that happening. I mean, I've heard of just like, yeah, I wouldn't think of like with the HIPAA, like they're not gonna, oh my gosh. I have so much
Yeah.
anxiety.
yeah, it was
Wow.
wild. Of all the things, the crazy ups and downs, that was just a really funny little way that God was like, oh, you think you're still in control. Funny.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Well, I mean, so you had kind of like the, outside of the box situation the whole way through because you have the 6-month-old, you're trying to figure out with the agency, how does this even work? It's crazy that, isn't normally done. So what were some of the other things that kind of came out of that?
Well, so before we even get to that, I will also mention because this is like not talked about very often. We had two matches before our son that
Mm.
failed. Which is obviously extremely difficult in the moment. So we got matched. If you don't know, usually with domestic infant adoption, you make some kind of book about yourself or online profile, and then a pregnant woman will sit down, she'll look at the families and choose families she might be interested in. So we got chosen by an expectant mother and she chose us. We went and met her. We went and got her sonograms with her. Um, Jack, our 4-year-old, met her. We kind of walked through her pregnancy with her, and she invited us to be at the birth. And then 2 or 3 days before the birth, we got a call that she had fled the state. She had decided to parent, and the agency had lost all contact with her. We were, I mean, thinking that we were getting the call that he was being born, and we were getting the call that he would not be coming home. And so he had a name, he had a nursery. I mean, we had our hospital bag packed, we had his car seat in the car. So it was extremely difficult. The second match, we never got
Wait,
this.
can we stop there? Because
Yeah, yeah.
I like have questions about that.
Okay.
I'm like all the questions. So I think, and if you don't feel comfortable answering this, like just tell me. But something I've always wondered is like when that happens, I have a good friend that this just happened to as well. Like I'm assuming you've been helping to pay for her like living expenses and things like that. Like, do you just lose that?
So with our agency, that's done through the agency, and it wasn't necessarily coming out of our pocket. So our fee with the agency stayed the same, and they took the hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, okay, so that's my first question. And then my second question, like emotionally, how do you like I mean, this has been a huge reason why Greg and I never did private. We were like, nope, we'll never go domestic adoption or even international, but definitely not domestic because I'm like, how do you in your brain be like, I'm going to deal with this loss, which probably feels like almost like a miscarriage in terms of loss. Like you had the nursery, you're ready to go, but also like it's a beautiful thing that like she has chosen to parent her child. Like, how do you like, what were you feeling?
It's hard to even describe or sum up. I've never had any sort of pregnancy loss, so I don't know how to compare it, but the loss felt monumental. I mean, it was huge. It was not like, "Oh, okay." Like, fine. I mean,
Mhm.
it felt like a member of our family that had a name that we had been praying for and fundraising for and all these things for years. It felt like it was just ripped out of our hands, but like you said, I mean, he was always hers. He always belonged to his mother, and that was always her right, and it was really tricky. I mean, we didn't have a way to contact her or anything. We wrote her a letter and gave it to our agency, and they said they could only ever give it if she reached out. So, who knows? But in the letter, we just said, like, he was always yours, and we, we think of him and talk about him by name. Like, I don't know if she used the name that we chose, but I think of him as being out there somewhere as that name. Um, and like every Mother's Day, I'll do a post and I'll be like, I'm still thinking about you. Like
You're
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
still, how long ago was that?
it's tough. Like that was probably a year before Bo came home, so 10 years ago or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a huge loss.
it's a huge loss. And our agency was very helpful as far as like letting us decide how we wanted to move forward. Like they did ask us to come off the wait list for a while to just make sure like that we were okay and everything. And we did do that. It took some time. But I think we knew in our heads that could happen. But I think we were very naive to it. It totally, totally felt like the rug had been pulled out from under us.
Yeah.
And there was nothing she ever said or did that indicated that she might not be sure. So it's really tough.
And you're
Can't even
making these
imagine.
personal connections with her and you're like you've been visiting her and it's not just like she's like someone out there. She's actually someone who has a face and a name and that you had a
And
relationship
someone that
with.
our heart was to bring whoever the birth mother was into our family and have them be a member of our family as well. So it wasn't just the loss of the baby. It was the loss of this whole vision that we
Yeah.
had that was now not going to happen.
Man, that's so crazy because, like, with foster care, you know, Greg and I felt like we're preparing ourselves in a way that we couldn't with domestic because the goal is always reunification until they change the goal. And so you have it in your mind like this is the goal, this is the goal, this is the goal. And with you, it's like no, the goal has always been to come, be a part of our family.
Right.
Whew, that's
Yeah,
rough.
that was rough.
And then it happened twice.
It happened twice. So the second time, I think we were much more guarded
Mhm.
and careful. Not even that that's a good thing, really, but I think it's just what, in that particular case, what had to be done. That one we did not get as far along, so it was not nearly as painful. And we also just always really believed that birth mom could do it. Like we were always believing that she could parent if she decided she, wanted to. And so we actually felt really happy for her in that one. That one just played out really differently and was not nearly as difficult, but it did make me kind of jaded, honestly. Like, I kind of felt like, okay, this is something we felt so sure we were called to do, and like now it's not going very smoothly. And like we thought we would get on the list and then get a call like that week, and it's been years, and like, what is happening? Why is this happening? It's never really going to happen. It was like a cute dream that we had. It kind of started to feel, I don't know, bitter maybe is the word, or at least hesitant. So when we did meet our son's mother and when we heard that he had been with her for 6 months, we were like, it's never going to happen. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, like, well, we want to meet her. Like, we're definitely open and we'll say yes to the name, but there's no way that this is gonna happen. And then we met him, and then the next week he was home with us. So it just it's the process is truly so crazy in that you just never know. There's no formula. Like, we had been going for years, and then all of a sudden it was like, Bo's here and he's home, and we didn't have any clothes ready or nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, anything that you had before, you would probably kind of out of, like, the jaded bitterness, you're like, "I don't want this anymore."
Yeah, and it's
Purge.
almost like, I don't know, it's like those clothes were his, like, we
Yeah.
packed them up, and they're not gonna be we're not saving them for the next child or whatever. So, yeah, we weren't ready. We started meeting with her, we didn't get anything ready, I think just to, like, protect our own hearts, like, and we live 2 hours away from Raleigh, so we were going to Raleigh to meet with her each day. Um, we met Bo at, like, a hamburger place. It was, like, not this special, beautiful moment. It was, like, we were meeting for lunch with the caseworker, and they just walked up, and we just met him in the parking garage. Like,
Oh, wow.
it wasn't this, like, I don't know, you pictured this moment, and that was not it. But we met him, we went and spent time with him every day leading up to him coming home, and then we spent the night with her in her home for a few nights so that we could learn, like, his routines
Wow.
and that kind of stuff. So, like, we literally all stayed in a house together with our 4-year-old too. It was kind of wild, and, like, we didn't sleep, and if you look back at pictures, it's like my eyes were so swollen, and, like, it was just it was just such an emotional roller coaster. Like, okay, we're in this home, we're snuggling this baby, he may or may not come home with us in a few days. Like, how do you
Wow.
process that while it's happening? And so it was just a whirlwind, and to be honest, I don't remember a lot of it. I think I was just so protected or guarded, and just trying to, like, get through it. So I always thought that our first moments with our child would be, like, so priceless and beautiful, and they were in a way, but they were also really crazy and hard and draining and scary.
What do we always say every episode? Expectations versus reality.
Yep, every
Yep,
time.
every time.
So, what was that like talking your son Jack through what was happening? Like, he's 4 years old. I'm thinking my son Judah will be 4 in October. I mean, I try to explain things to him, and I know he's understanding more than probably what I'm giving him credit for. But what is that like, and what did you see in him as you were walking through this?
It's tough because, like, how much can they really conceptualize? I mean, even if there was a baby in my tummy, like, they know there's a baby in there, but then they don't really understand, like, what that really is going to look like. And so, because we had started this process when Jack was so young, I mean, we had sort of always been talking about, like, one day you're gonna have a brother or sister, and they're gonna come be a baby. And um, he kept telling everybody that he didn't want to be the big brother because his name was Jack, and he didn't want anybody to call him brother. He wanted to be called Jack. So he was just very fixated on, like,
Such a toddler
they're
thing to
gonna call
say.
me something different. Like, that's all he cared about. It's like he really didn't understand. And we had bought him, dolls, we had bought him books, like, we had done all the things, but he really had no clue. And then when he met Bo, I think this was, like, on day 3 or 4 of after we had met Bo. When he met him, he was just like, "Oh, like, oh, he's a baby." So I don't know what he thought he was gonna be. I don't know if he thought he was gonna be a doll. But we just decided early on with Bo's birth mother on, like, a family nickname for her. So
Oh,
we call her that's what we call her. Kind of like a grandma nickname or something like that.
Like
So
auntie or like something like that.
exactly. So we started calling her that, and you know, we you guys have talked about this on your podcast a lot, like age appropriate honesty. So everything we told him was true, um, but pretty vague. We'd
yeah.
say, like, "Oh yeah, like, God had Bo for our family, and he grew in Mimi's tummy, but now he's coming home to live with us in our house. And I don't know at what point he really got that Bo was gonna. Probably not until Bo was home did he actually understand it,
Yeah.
because we were driving to Raleigh to visit Bo every day, until the day we brought him home. And in true, just crazy adoption fashion, the night before it was time to go pick Bo up, Jack threw up all night because, of course, he did. And so we drove to Raleigh with Jack sitting in the back with a trash can in his lap,
Oh my god.
Oh gosh.
vomiting. And we were up on stage. We did like a little ceremony with our agency where we like lit a unity candle, and my dad read scripture, and it was very
Oh.
sweet, very meaningful. But Jack tugged on my sleeve like during the ceremony and was like, "Hey mom, I gotta throw up." I was like, "Okay, buddy, go find grandma." Like, just
Oh
ran
my
off.
god.
So he like ran off stage to vomit like while we were doing our little like unity ceremony. So
Yeah.
it's
You
just,
can't make this up.
no, you
Like,
can't. I mean, you think it's gonna be this moment, and it's just such real life. And like Bo pooped everywhere. It's just
Yeah.
they're children, and it's
Yep.
messy. Family is messy, and
Huh.
adoption is messy, and so it was
okay, wait.
just,
I want to know more about this. Like, you stayed with the birth mom, like in her
yes,
home. That's
yes.
wild.
It was wild. It was wild, and you kind of feel like you're on an audition of sorts. Like
Like, what
it's
if
like,
she's
okay,
like,
like
"Oh, those are your pajamas. You can't take my
exactly. I mean,
child."
we went out to a restaurant, and I was holding the baby, and I spilled coffee in my lap, and I was like, that's it. I've ruined it. Like, I've birthed the
Wow.
baby. Like, she's gonna say, like, what is this woman? So it's just like every moment it's this pressure, of feeling. And I don't think she thought of it that way, but how can you not think of it that way as the
Right.
adoptive mother? I was just every moment like I was wanting Jack to behave, and I was wanting my husband not to say something stupid, and just I was trying to be authentic, but also like put my best self out there. And it's just crazy town.
Yeah.
It's just wild. And you can't you can't keep up anything performative but for so long. So she certainly saw the real us. I feel like, I mean, when you've been up with a screaming baby all night, and you've haven't slept and all that, like your true colors come out. And so I don't feel like we did anything to convince her, or anything like that. She saw what it really was, and we just tried to continually make our peace with that, and just open our hands and be like, okay, this is what it is. Like, take it or leave it, I guess.
Yeah, that really is wild though, because usually you think of, okay, this birth mom is going to look at my profile book, see these like very curated pictures and parts of my life that I'm going to show to her.
Uh,
And then all of a sudden you're face to face and in her home. And
in the restaurant where the coffee has spilled, and
yes,
figuring out what to do.
yeah,
But I think it worked for our situation, because our vision was that she would truly be a member of our family, that she would
yeah,
be in our home, that she would be here for holidays. Like, that was always what we wanted. So it made sense for us.
Is that how it is now?
Yes. Yes.
wow,
I don't mean to make it sound like it's all rainbows and lollipops, because it's not, but it's that part of the vision has come true. So we still live a couple hours away from each other, but we both travel to see each other. So we made like a formal agreement with our agency for the first year. So in North Carolina, there's no legal formal agreement for open adoption. So there's no like legal obligation for us to be open. That's just an agreement we made with our agency. So we agreed to see each other once a quarter, and to have some kind of contact once a month. So like emails, texts, pictures, things like that. So that's pretty much what we stuck to that first year, and it was a little more planned, a little more formal. But it just sort of evolved to a very informal relationship. And so we see each other. I would say we still see each other at least once a quarter. We've done holidays. She comes to the family beach house. She just came last week for Bo's birthday, and we go there. So she's like part of the family.
Yeah. That's so
How does
incredible.
Bo like? I mean, he knows, like who she is. How does he respond to her? Yeah.
He really treats her and thinks of her, I think, kind of like any other aunt or cousin. Um, I don't think he has like super complicated feelings yet about her. I mean, he gets excited when his cousin comes to visit. He gets excited when she comes. She usually brings some sort of a gift or a treat or, something like that. And he gets excited. I don't think he thinks of it right now on a deeper level.
And
So it's
he's
just
9, right?
he's 9 and I'd say he's pretty immature emotionally. Because a lot of the books say like around 8 or 9, there's sort of a developmental leap where they'll start to understand it in a new way.
Hmm.
And he knows about sex, and so he has asked a few questions in the last year where you can see that his wheels are turning. So, for example, he was like, how there has to be like the egg and there has to be the seed. And he was like, I don't really understand how that could happen by accident. And I was like, okay, that's valid, because that's how we talk about it. Like a
Yeah.
pregnancy was accidental or it was unplanned or like, but he's like, how in the world could you be doing that by accident? Like that's,
It's like so pure and
I
yes,
know.
innocent and
yes.
hilarious.
So we've gotten that question. We've also gotten, and we've gotten these questions from both of our kids, honestly, but I don't even remember which one asked this, but we've always explained, that his birth mom, she got pregnant, but she wasn't ready to be a mom. She didn't have what she needed. She didn't have support in her life that she needed. So for example, when she got a new job, one of the kids was like, oh, she has a job now. Like now that she's ready to be a mom, like at what point does she go back to being the mom?
Yeah. Wow.
And then we realized, oh my gosh, we've maybe not done a good job of explaining this is permanent. Like
Mm,
this is never being reversed no matter what happens on either side. Like you're our son forever. And so we obviously lovingly corrected that and we're like, oh no, babe, like no matter whatever happens, like you're our son forever. That's
mhm.
not something that can change. But we realized we had never said that. So of course their little innocent mind thought, oh, okay, like she's ready to be a mom now.
Yeah, and I imagine that that could be even more complex if she had other children.
Yes. And that might be the case someday.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man,
Yeah,
that is
those are just complicated things to, you know, complicated questions to answer for any child, whether they're adopted or not, or even like we had friends in our home a couple weeks ago, and the little girl who was 4, she's asking me like, "Oh, did these baby twins, could they grow in your belly? Do you have pictures of that?" And so I'm trying to now explain to her that, the birth mom chose that, like all the different things that go
Right.
into it. But I'm like, I have like one day with you to explain
Right.
all of this. I don't have with my son, it's been like we're talking about this over the course of months and years and everything. And so it's complicated to
Yes.
try to get that. And like you said, we've talked about before of the age appropriate transparency and honesty. And eventually they learn that you haven't given them all of the details. And
Right.
so where do you unfold that and how do you explain it? So it's a lot.
We've even had there's been times where Bo has talked about it like nonstop. Just for a little season of 6 months or so, he'll mention it to like a stranger in the grocery store or just anyone. And so there's been times where we've like met a new family and had them over and when I've had to call them beforehand and be like, "Hey, look, because the age appropriate honesty, I mean, that's our policy in our family, but I don't know how other families want to handle that
Right.
conversation. It's certainly not my place." So I've called families beforehand and been like, okay, we're an adoptive family. This is our situation. Bo's probably going to mention it. So, like, I don't know what you're most comfortable with. Do you want me to answer their questions? Do you want to talk to your kids about it in advance?
Hmm.
Because he will bring it up, and I've seen that look of panic on other parents' eyes where they don't know like what to say, and I'm certainly not trying to explain it, too much to other people where I cross their boundaries. I've learned that it helps to kind of mention it in advance when possible. It's going to come up sometimes when you can't
Sure.
control it. And I also always prep his teachers. So every year since he was in preschool, I have reached out to the teacher before school starts, and just I don't need to like give them my whole life story, but I've just said like, "Hey, just so you know, Bo's adopted. This is our situation. We talk about it very openly. If he brings it up, don't feel like you need to shut it down for his benefit, but also like you can. If you don't want to have that conversation with a class, you can just tell him like, "Hey, Bo, I don't want to talk about this right now," and that's fine with us too. And every teacher I've ever done that with has been really grateful, because then they don't have that moment of panic of like, I don't know how to navigate this conversation in the moment.
Yeah, that's really helpful. We actually just finished recording an episode about advocating for adopted children in schools. And are you still teaching
Yes.
too? Okay. So
Yes.
you have like both sides of the story of like a
Exactly.
parent of an adopted and then also a teacher. Um, what's something that like you have found on the teacher side has been helpful in terms of just like navigating kids, whether they're adopted or just like have some extra needs for other reasons?
If you are thinking like, "I'm not sure if I should let the teacher know," like, please do. I think it's so much more helpful to know up front than to like run into something and then find out and then you're trying to backpedal. And this is just like very practical, but I would say write it down. Don't find the teacher at meet the teacher night and explain this stuff, because I have 120 students. I am not going to remember after meet the teacher night who told me what. I'm not going to remember at all. I'm not going to remember one child's name, and I'm certainly not going to remember who told me they were adopted. So write a letter and hand it to the teacher at meet the teacher night, or write them an email would probably be even better, because then they can't lose the letter. Um, but yeah, upfront, anything like that, like, "Oh, my child has certain behavioral triggers or certain emotional things," or like, "I don't really want my child doing a family tree type of project," or, that might be triggering. Anything like that that you can give the teacher plenty of notice on is so much more helpful, rather than me calling after an incident and then be like, "Oh yeah, well, he's oppositional defiant and blah 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 blah, and we never told you." Like that's hard. I could have been doing things a lot differently all year if I had known that. So writing it down, being really upfront about it, and then letting the teacher know if the child knows. Like, I always tell the teacher that Bo knows his whole story, so there's nothing you can accidentally say to Bo. But
Mm.
if there are parts like, "Oh, our child has this diagnosis, but they don't know," like, definitely make sure the teacher knows that part too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Or
so
like I know
good.
there's Yeah, that's super helpful. And I know there's some families that like, I'm going to let you know that there was drug exposure, but like we don't talk to the child about the mom that way because we want to be respectful of her, things like that. That's helpful.
Yeah, I think that, being able to write something down like that and give it to the teacher, we just talked about it. It's showing that you're showing compassion for your child, but you're also showing compassion for the teacher, because like you said, 120 students, like I can't even begin to imagine trying to remember 120 names plus their parents, plus their siblings, plus their whole life story. So write it down with a picture of the child or something to like put it together. Put the visual reminder together, and that's super helpful. That's good.
I think it could be helpful even for things like coaches. If your child's playing, like, a lot of kids with trauma backgrounds don't do well with competition. for example. So that could be like a trigger, a behavioral trigger or an emotional trigger. So even things like that could be really helpful, for a coach if you want to like write a letter to your coach or something like that. But even like the nursery worker at church or just anyone who's going to have that regular exposure, it could be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We talked about nursery workers, but I didn't even think about like coaches and things like that. And obviously, like you have a ton of trauma training, you know, because you're an adoptive mom, but then I'm sure you got some as a teacher too. Probably not quite as extensive, I would assume. What about yeah. What about the like let's say it's a teacher who doesn't have a lot of experience. Is there something in particular that you've seen in the school setting that you're like, "Oh, a teacher should know this," or yeah, like how to handle it this way?
Um, I think it just depends so much on the situation, but definitely knowing like for example, Bo, when it was Mother's Day at school, like all the moms were coming in for like a spa day, which is so cute. But he got really freaked out the day of that he didn't know, he wasn't sure the teacher had like told the right mom. Like
Oh,
oh, he was like explaining it to her. He was like, no, it's like my mom lives in my house and that's who needs to come. Like, did you let her know or did you let Mimi know? And so if the teacher didn't know any kind of thing about our story, like I don't know how she would have known to handle it. But she told me later, she was like, "Yeah, I just played it really cool." I was like, "No, your mom in your house, of course. That's who's coming." And she just moved on. But it was like if she didn't know our situation, that probably would have been a really freaky moment for her. So I think it's just giving enough details so that people feel prepared. That's all I really, that's the most important part.
Could you imagine being a teacher, like the things you probably hear from kids? Oh my god.
It's it's unreal. And we know all of it. We know all the tea.
I know.
Sometimes
I want to ask you like about specific stories. And I'm like, no, no, no. Those are their stories. We don't need to talk about that.
I know. I'm like, I think about like crazy things my kids say at home,
Oh,
and then I'm like, or like today, like my daughter like came crying and she was like, "Daddy hit me," and I'm like, "Oh gosh, like you can't say it like that,
They
okay? He
all
didn't hit
do.
you, okay?
They
The thing
all do. They
fell that
all
he was
find the
holding."
worst way to say it too.
I know. Even the nursery workers that I very vividly remember the day. So our twins were born on a Sunday, but they were born like in the evening. And that morning, I think my mom or my husband had brought Judah down to the nursery, and the nursery worker was like, "Oh," asking Judah like, "Oh, have your little sisters been born? Are they here? Is that why your mom's not here?" And he's like, "Yeah." Like he just answered like very emphatically, "Yeah." And then I walked down and I'm like, "No, they're not here." And then literally that day, that's when they were born. But it's like, he didn't have any idea, but then like he kind of that's crazy. Like he's saying it on the same day, but he just
With full confidence.
yeah, exactly. So much confidence. Like she really didn't think I was there.
Kids are funny.
I know. Oh man. Well, this is just like it's so good. You have like so many different facets of your story, Tara, that I want to like keep going into and like drawing out. But one thing that I just thought of was like thinking about the dynamic in your home of Jack and Bo as brothers and like what that looks like. Do they go to the same school? Like, do they have similar friends and teachers and things? What does that look like parenting both a biological child and an adoptive child?
It's interesting because we don't know any different. So I
Yeah.
don't know how it compares. I try to talk to friends about it. They're obviously very different, but I feel like even biological siblings often are. So I don't know, but they're very different in their interests. We've got one that's like super into sports, super social butterfly, and then that's Jack, and then Bo. He tried football, I think just because his brother wanted him to, and he was from the field. He was yelling, "Mom, I don't want to do this next year." He's like way different interests, like more artistic, way more into like pretend play, like loves to be at home, way more introverted. So they're very different, but act like any other brothers. I mean, they argue, they play together, they it's a great age gap. I really like the around 3.5 year age gap. Um, we did do something where we moved schools. So we had Jack in one school, and it was like maybe not the best situation, but it was working out okay for him. But we knew there was no way it would be a good match for Bo. And so we wrestled really, really hard, and we ended up moving schools for both of them. So they went to the same elementary school. It's been a great situation. Now Jack's in middle school, so they don't go to school together. But that was one of those parenting things where it's like, do we move one child because it's what's best for the other child? And like, is that fair? Are we traumatizing the one by making him move? And you're always going to doubt those things. I guess you just try to do what's best at the end of the day. But that was probably the hardest decision that we've had as far as like doing what's best for everybody all the way around.
Do you ever get any questions about like favoritism because of biological versus adopted?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. And we get the question of like, did it feel differently when you met them? Like, was there more of an instant connection with your biological child? And it's tough because those first few months, our adoption was so grueling. And I do block a lot of that out because it was harder. And so Bo will say things like, oh, what was my first word? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't write it down and I don't remember because I was just surviving. And like, I'm sorry. And I obviously I do know Jack's first word. And so there are moments where we feel like maybe there's maybe not favoritism, but like an unfairness there. And that's just part of the hard part of adoption that I don't have a good answer for. It's just hard. And we just tell him that, like, bud, we don't remember your first word. And it was just a really different situation. And um, we didn't write it down, and that stinks. I wish we did remember, and we just are honest with him about it. But as far as favoritism, I don't remember that he's adopted most of the time. Like it feels exactly the same. Our love for them, our advocacy for them, the way we parent feels the same. I do feel like they have slightly different emotional needs, and that'll probably be even more pronounced as they get older, and we'll just deal with that as it comes.
What about with Mimi being in their like life? Does Jack ever like feel like, well, Mimi brought Bo a present, like or something like that? Is that a thing?
Well, one, she's amazing and does such a good job of like never putting us in that position. Um, she does such a good job. And I forgot to say earlier that we're kind of in touch with some other biological family too. So like aunts, uncles, cousins, a few people like that. And they've all just been incredible as far as like they include Jack and everything. It's never just Bo that they're interested in, which is awesome. So luckily we've not had to navigate that. But we do ask him sometimes, like, does it ever feel weird that Bo has this whole other family and you don't? And he's like, no, they're my family too. So it's just
That's
kind of like,
sweet.
I guess because we've always thought of it that way and talked about it that way, he seems to just think, okay, that's my cousin or auntie or whatever, just as much as it is Bo's.
It's really neat. There's so many different things, like, we've talked so much about, like, do you pursue an open adoption? Do you pursue semi-open? What does that look like? What does it mean for your family if you have biological children or if you have additional adopted children? And I think I love your story because there's so much that you just don't know. Like, you really have no idea how it's all going to play out. You could have stayed at Mimi's house for those few days and never seen her again, or she comes to every holiday gathering in your beach house and everything else. Like, it's just God works it out. Like, he really lays the path for you, and you have to trust that that's how it will be.
Exactly. And I really do think that God had Bo for us.
Mhm.
And that's why that type of adoption just was so clearly on our heart because that God just knew that was our future. I think it just deeply depends so much on everybody's individual situation. I will also say, like, we have a ton of support. We have a very supportive extended family. Like, they were all super excited and supportive about adoption. I think it would be a lot harder if we didn't have that. And that's just another layer of like why it's so different for everybody. So our family, like our parents, our siblings have embraced the situation and aren't weird about it. And, they're fine with her coming to holidays. And that's just made it work for our family.
Yeah, and your
That's
family is
awesome.
very pro-adoption, like, always has been, always cared about the orphans and widows and everything, like, from what I've known of your family. That's how it's always been.
Yes. They when we had our ceremony, it was very sweet because we were allowed to invite people. And so my sister surprised us and flew in for the ceremony, which was so sweet. And my husband's family flew from Texas. Like we had people there, and it was just really special. Because not everybody is willing to just be like, yeah, we're on board for this super non-traditional situation, and like they also were very open to being coached on like the right words and like how do we refer to this, because some families aren't open and they get offended by you saying like, oh, we don't really want you to call it this, or we want you to use this language. But our family was open to that, and so that really helped too.
Man,
So
yeah,
sweet.
that's and so yeah, so sweet, so important. Like that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I, every time we do these interviews, I'm always like, oh man, all the things to think about, like with your own situations and just, I'm like, man, my husband really needs to listen to this episode. um, but we're like have just now started opening some communication with our birth mom. And so your story is so helpful in thinking through like, this is the way things can look. And it's just yeah, it's just helpful to hear. So we really appreciate you being with us today.
You're so welcome. It's my honor.
All right. Well, if anything we said today, guys, made you laugh, cry, or feel seen, please feel free to share this with a friend. And we will be back next week. See you later.
Bye.